coastal ecosystems management, bioethics, benthic ecology and its importance, and oil and gas and industrial pollution impacts. She's also a campaigner for greater space for women and girls in science. Just recently, as a mark of respect and reward for her work, Professor Gobin had named after her a rare, almost 3-foot worm found in parts of the deep Caribbean Sea. It has been christened the Lamellibrachia judygobini. She's agreed to talk with us about what this means in real terms, as well as some of her concerns for the prospects of the Caribbean marine environment and the impact of continuing marine industrial activity. Professor, good to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning, Andy. Thank you, and I'm happy to be here with you and all the viewers.
All right. Well, it's great to have you. So let's talk about the naming of this creature. What's the importance of it, and how unique that is to have a rare creature in the environment named after somebody. I imagine this is how this biology organization operates. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it is really an honor, because it's an attempt at sort of recognizing someone in a particular field. And of course, in this instance, it's recognition of myself in the marine science environment. And this is globally recognized. So it really is quite important, and I'm deeply honored. And just to correct you there, it's Lamellibrachia judygobini.
Right.
Difficult to pronounce scientifically, but so it's the culmination really of my career, sort of that honor that is given when one has performed extremely well in a particular area of science.
Right, and I'm reading up some stuff with about some of you and your colleagues. I saw a thing here talking about finding new life in deep sea habitat in the Caribbean. So that is a sort of ongoing kind of exercise.
Absolutely. And for too long, we have been left out as small islands, territories, and of course in the Caribbean. Deep sea science and marine science in general is quite an expensive activity. So we really have never had the funds, the financial resources, nor human resources to a large extent, to be able to work in the deep sea area. Remember, and the marine science area, for example. Remember, we're talking very deep depths of the ocean. It's very cold, it's very dark. No, we can't go physically to these depths. So what is required is really high-tech, very, very high-tech equipment, remotely operated vehicles, expensive technology, and what the ROV, or remotely operated vehicle, is actually what collects the data and the information. So in this particular instance, we were at a depth. We were very fortunate to be on board the EV, or exploration vessel, the Nautilus, which is owned by the renowned Professor Robert Ballard, who was responsible for locating the wreck of the Titanic. So we were very lucky in the first instance to be on board with him. By we, I mean my colleague, Dr. Diva Ammon, and myself. So here we are looking at our own ecosystem, looking at our own organisms. And what happens is that with the ROV, there's attached cameras, there's also, arms that are manipulated by the scientists to actually, of course, take pictures of anything that we see in that deep environment. Remember, we're talking 3,000 to 4,000 meters, very dark, very cold, extremely high pressures. But of course, the ROV is built to sustain that sort of environment. And there we were. We came upon this amazing ecosystem. Now, they're very rare in the deep sea environment, because the deep sea basically is quite barren. The sediments at the bottom, it's quite barren, except when you come upon an ecosystem like this, which was actually being fed by gas gases being emitted from the center of the Earth. So this is where we located the specimens, many of them which are very new to science. We reckon we've got, this was just one, the Lamellibrichia judigobini was just one that we've named, the team rather, the taxonomy team have named to date, but we expect that there's at least 150 more.
Yeah, and you say that, things could go down as far as 4,000 meters, and I see reference to at least where this thing may have been found, 1,000 to 1,650 meters deep. That's where, that's one colony, if you like to call it, one part of the depth down there that where you will find stuff.
Yes, so this where we were was almost for 3,000 to 4,000 meters depth. So it was very interesting. So there was the videography that took place, the ROV. It's very exciting to look at it because you actually manipulate it to take the specimens, put them in a drawer, and then this is what is brought back up on the ROV itself. The ROV, of course, is also fitted with extremely bright lights and cameras. So the technology is really just amazing, and it is a first for Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm really very pleased. This is not just a first or kudos for Judy Gobin. This is kudos for Trinidad and Tobago. We have put Trinidad and Tobago on the map.
Yeah, and is there something special about areas east of Trinidad and south of Tobago as to why, or is that correct to assume that that is an area of real concentration for people in your line of work?
Actually, we had done work in this area before, other ships. So globally, we have had ships, I kind of refer to it as passing in the night. Research vessels from developed countries have been here in the area as early as the sort of 60s, 70s, and so on. And what happens is of course, scientific publications are put out, and it's only when we actually see the publications that we recognize, ooh, they've been in our territory. So this was really very different. At the same time, as you ask, we know there are what we call hotspots of biodiversity off of Trinidad and Tobago. We know there are hotspots in the northeast area of Trinidad, close to Tobago. As well, we know the sort of south east, between Venezuela and Trinidad, that's southwest. We recognize that they are hotspot areas, and it really all depends on a particular activity that might be going on in that area, in that geographic location. And in the deep sea environment, it is generally the emission of a gaseous substance from the core of the Earth, basically, simply meaning that at this depth, there's no food for animals, for organisms. Where is this food coming from? Remember, there's no light, so there's no photosynthesis as we know it. There's no, by the time the sort of dead carcasses and animals get to this depth, they may drop anywhere that organisms may not be able to get to them. So really what's happening here is chemosynthesis, which is the use of the chemical, the gaseous emission. That's what's being used by the microorganisms, which are in the gut, for example, of this interesting deep sea tube worm.
You have an idea of how long it takes for some animals or whatever it is, some organism who's died and cast into the waters to get to the bottom of the sea, depending on where that is?
Yeah, so what happens is, so we have things, so sometimes you get what we call whale falls, or a particular carcass that actually does get to the bottom. Remember, the deep sea has sort of the marine environment has layers and levels. So in coastal areas, inshore areas, it's a sort of zonation, let's say, of the sediments. So you don't just go, let's say, off the East Coast and get into the deep sea. So there's that sort of gradation. So the living organisms, when they die, their carcasses and sort of remnants tend to stay in those areas where they are actually living. But remember, the deep environment is really hardly any animals living in the actual water column.
Yeah, and people who are engaged in this kind of activity, you have to maintain, or you have to be in possession of a kind of state of health to qualify to do that kind of work to begin with, right? Let's talk about some of that. What you have to have, good blood pressure, good everything, good heart pressure. Your heart has to be in fine condition and them kinds of things.
Well, no, as I mentioned earlier, remember, you are not actually going into at that depth. What happens is we are sat on a research vessel, and the videography, the instrumentation, the technology is so great that we can actually see on a screen what's happening at the bottom. At this depth, with the high pressures, nobody is going to live. And this is why, with scuba diving, there's a particular depth that one can go to. And then when you're coming up with gear, when you're coming up, you have to, make sure you stabilize, make sure you balance the pressure and the sort of oxygen getting into your bloods and so on. So at this depth, nope, there's no physical body going down to that depth. I believe the sort of deepest that some oceanographers have gone to could be about 1,000, just feet we're talking, in something that's called a bathysphere. That actually that was built almost like in the same sort of technology like an ROV, where it can actually withstand the pressure, but certainly no further than 800 to 1,000 feet.
Yeah, well, that's what a couple hundred yards in any case, and that's deep for a lot of people.
Yeah.
One of your colleagues was talking about the dangers of the sort of precariousness of some of these areas around Trinidad, where some of these rare species may show up. And I was reading in this stuff something about a purple octopus, a white sponge, and an orange anemone. Let's talk about it. So those things are precious and need to be, their propagation needs to be protected. Is that the point?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Andy. Some organisms that are of value to us?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay, so in the marine environment, and this is a key question as to people would say, and they have said, what's the big deal? What's the big deal with a new species and a marine worm, a tube worm? Well, it's very exciting and interesting because we need to know what a particular species is, what we're calling it. So this is why the taxonomic study is really important, to put a name to a species, because there is a very large open field of marine genetic resources, which means that these resources, these organisms, are key elements of what we have today, pharmaceuticals, drugs, cosmetics, and so on. Some cancer drugs have been worked up, put together in laboratories based on the DNA of the marine genetic resource or a particular organism. So these are new. It's a new area for territories like ours, where, who knows, this particular organism and species, and that's why we need to understand the genetics of it, the components, what it can stand and withstand, and that whole relationship with the microorganisms. So in the laboratories in first world countries, this is a regular activity in biotechnology and analytical laboratories, where extractions have gone on for decades using even our marine species. So there have been, for example, a Caribbean sponge, Caribbean coral reefs that have been used to produce high value products such as cancer drugs and other pharmaceuticals. So it really is a whole world waiting to be developed and explored.
Right, and just a small part of the danger is we're going to come back to this. We need to take a break, but just let me just say it. Part of the danger of this, one of your colleagues has said that scientific research in this area is struggling to keep up with commercial activities such as oil and gas exploration and so on. And without targeted action, these species may be lost before they are even studied, to the extent that the finding could bring.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
We get that on the other side of this break, along with your campaign to create more space for women and girls in this line of activity. We're coming back. This is 10 Questions. Stay with us.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blanche Shares. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby St. James, Kenny Sport, Extra Foods, Mart's Liquor Palace, 14 Diego Martin Main Road, and WESN, 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook.
Welcome back to the program. Our guest is the internationally renowned professor of marine biology, Dr. Judith Coben, head of the Department of Life Sciences at the St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies and member of the Deep Sea Biology Center. Let's get to the issue about yourself and your colleagues are continuing to worry about continued and in some cases ramped up activity for oil and gas exploration in the marine environment. And my question to you, one, is what is the balance that has to be struck if we're talking about the importance of maintaining the marine environment for a number of other reasons? What is the balance that has to be struck? And what's the conversation taking place between people like yourselves and those who want to go for what it's worth?
And it's a very difficult one, Andy. As we expect, Trinidad and Tobago is an oil and gas-based economy, and of course, we're in the deep area, we're in the sea, we're in the marine environment, that exploration activity. How do we balance it? Well, I think policy makers and decision makers and the government, the ministers need to be listening closely. They need to be paying attention to what the scientists are saying. We want to have a conversation at the table because on the one hand, we are hearing talk about the impacts of climate change, and of course, the marine environment and the deep sea environment is the largest absorber of carbon dioxide. Anything that we do, the oil and gas activities, pollution and contamination that gets into the marine environment and the deep sea environment is going to affect the resilience of the marine environment and the deep sea. Therefore, that ability to absorb carbon dioxide is going to be reduced. So there are key elements that need to be brought to the table. How do we do it? We as a country need to understand that there must be balance. When the oil and gas runs out eventually, which it will do, what will we be left with? We need to seriously consider conserving and managing the practices that are taking place at the moment, especially in the oil and gas, activities and in the oil and gas area.
So let's say what is happening in all the activity now and the frenzy about getting stuff up from the waters around Guyana, for instance. Forget the territorial issue, but to what extent that is a matter that is under consideration by people like yourselves, and what is the nature of the dialogue between people like yourself and the people who are going for broke, I want to call it that, in the Guyana environment?
Well, as you know, as everyone knows, it's the new sort of frontier for Guyana, and we're all very pleased for them and for the territory. At the moment, there is not much conversation where science and scientific advisors are included. And that simply is because the sort of weighting of the oil and gas economy is much greater in the eyes of most decision makers compared to the environmental value. And that is really quite unfortunate because this is the very environment, the marine area, that is actually providing you with the resource. Therefore, you should really be attempting to manage and balance. That's what sustainability is all about. Nobody's saying don't touch, don't explore, no activities. We're absolutely not saying that. What we're saying is you need to manage it. You need to be guided. So just going back to even the species discovery and so on that we have done, we could be destroying with oil and gas activity, we could actually be destroying valuable ecosystems that we are only now even uncovering. So really that's key to the conversation. And at the moment, there really has not been many seats round table with the decision makers.
Right, and one of your colleagues has said that, and the lament is that such a commercial activity, whether it's here or there or elsewhere where it's happening in our region, without targeted action, these species that are being found now, in some cases being discovered for the first time, and others that may be there, these could be damaged and wiped out before they're even studied. And this studying of them would lead to possibilities, as you talk about, for providing medicines and other kinds of things for our own sustenance going forward.
Absolutely, and that economy is very valuable. The pharmaceutical economy, as everyone knows, is extremely valuable. And territories like ours have actually been left out of that conversation until now. Some of us have been pushing, and we have come to the table. We are at the table. The recent negotiations, you might have seen on the newspaper and internationally, globally, the BBNJ, or Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Treaty, has been agreed to around the table at the United Nations. And I'm very pleased to say that as a scientist, I was present, an advisor to CARICOM, as well as with my deep sea group, the scientific group. We, small island territories, have made a significant contribution. So we are at the table in that no, there will be shared benefits in the future when the developed countries are coming into open waters to recover, to extract, to explore. There must be participation from the small island territory, which is us basically. So we are going to be involved in the benefit sharing. Whatever benefits accrue, they will come down to us as well, redound to us as well. At the same time, we have included and insisted on capacity building to continue for small island scientists and small island territories.
Yeah. Okay, I wanted to ask about what's the value of what your colleague calls a purple octopus, but you can hold that because I wanted to get to a bit of your activism to get more people, from your side of humanity into this business, women and girls, more women and girls. How do you encourage that as someone in academia and otherwise?
Oh, I mean, I think that's, obviously a pet project. It's just great that I have, I hope that, I encourage young women, young girls, scientists, and young men as well in the field of science, in that I can do it. You can do it. I've done it. You can do it. I've sort of shattered the glass ceiling by becoming the first female professor in the Department of Life Sciences. I just like everyone else, I've come up the works, gone to university, and here I must say that my grounding was at the University of the West Indies. So I encourage students, I encourage young women, girls, after you've done your CAPE, come to the University of the West Indies. We offer a variety of degrees, and you never know what's going to spark your interest. It's probably the marine sciences the area is so huge. There is a lot to be done. Basically, if you think that was just one species that was named after me, there's lots more. There's lots more discovery to be had. We have only just touched, we're at the tip of the iceberg in this marine science and deep sea environment. What we have done and uncovered for Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean is literally the tip of the iceberg. There's lots more to be done.
Yeah, and what is the value of what your colleagues talked about, described as the purple octopus?
Well, again, it is always interesting for us because for too long, as I mentioned before, it was developed country scientists were producing our videos and sort of photos and writing papers on what was found and what had been found in Caribbean territories and in Trinidad and Tobago. For a change, it is great to have local colleagues, myself and Dr. Aman, and hopefully lots of other young scientists in the future, actually describing what is basically in our own backyard. So yes, this is our octopus. That purple octopus is our octopus. So we need to be, again, the taxonomic studies will be carried out, and to put a name to this purple octopus. We know the genera that it's from, but obviously we need to put a specific name to it, because who knows, maybe this wonderful purple octopus and alongside other species in our environment, in our local environment, is going to be a huge contributor of some important genetic resource in the very near future.
Yeah, was it that Dr. Aman who said that perhaps the things that are being found now, the tube worms that could get up to 3 feet long, will be as iconic as our hummingbird or the leatherback turtle? So my question is, this means they will be unique and native to us?
Absolutely. So and that's the whole point about it. It's that we are uncovering what is new to science, not just new to Trinidad and Tobago, it's new to science. So as I mentioned, when you have these sort of, long, it's very desert-like in the deep sea environment of the bottom of the sea at these depths. So when you come upon this amazing ecosystem where you have the purple sponge, where you have the tube worms, where you have the mussels, where you have other crustacean bivalves and so on, it is exciting. It is also that this is new to this area. It is also new to science. It's the first time that it is being recorded and the taxonomic studies are being carried out scientifically on these organisms. They haven't moved from any particular area because the sort of vastness of the deep sea environment and this sort of desert environment and more importantly, that lack of food throughout the deep sea. That's why you don't have various ecosystems along the way. So you're in the ROV is going to go for miles without recording anything really. And then you stumble upon this wonderful ecosystem, as we did. So this is new to science, not just Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, Dr. Judith Gobin, Professor of Marine Biology, Head of the Department of Life Sciences at the St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies, internationally renowned life scientist around the waters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andy. Bye-bye.
You're very welcome. This has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.